Okay, I've been tasked with building an application around this payment advice or remittance that shows basically that certain things have been paid, but the interesting part of this is line items. So I'm going to really show how to get line items out of this document. Really, it's a standard application. From there, you have to add line item capability. So for the first 5 or 10 minutes, we'll be setting up all of the standard Datacap application pieces. I'll walk you through that again. If you've watched any other videos, you'll probably just skip ahead. So I always start with Datacap FastStock admin. You can log into any application, then you can get out this wizard. You create the new application wizard. I'm going to create a new RRS application. I'm going to click next. I'm going to call this redemptions. Choose form template, say next. The rest of these I'm not going to create any doc hierarchy through this. I'll create it through the FastDoc system. The application was created. I'm going to close that. There is no open on FastDoc. There should be, but there's not, so you have to restart it. And I will choose now that application we just created called redemptions and log into that. And here is my application. So first things first, I need to create my doc types, and I'm going to create a new document called redemption. I'm going to enable this. I'm going to give it inheritance from type document. I'll say add. There's our redemption. I'll say create a new page called redemption main. I usually have underscore main is common for me. That's what I use. And I'm going to have this inherit from page type. I don't think there are any trailing pages. I think these are all going to be one pagers. It's a demonstration, but just in case, I'm going to add a page called redemption trailing and have that inherit off page as well. So there shouldn't be any trailing docs. If there are, I'm going to make sure that we know that we have a minimum of 1 on the main page, a maximum of 1, and that its order is the first page. And on redemption trailing, we don't require any. We don't have a maximum number, but its order is number 2, so it'll be the second document. This is when it does what it does for deciding if a document is properly constructed. So I'm going to save that. So the next thing is I'm going to add the actual fields on this, and the fields are the company from and the company to. Well, let's just say this is my company, and so I need to get, this is who it's sending me the invoice, and this is my company. So I'm going to just find the date and time off of this, the date of issue, the payment number, and then I'll get the line item. So company, date, and payment number, and then from there I will get the line items. Okay, so now we're set. Company, so I'm going to add the fields here. Company, no rule sets are going to inherit from fields. We don't have that. There's nothing there to really inherit. Company, date, add, and what was the other one? Reference number, payment number. There it is. We'll go to payment number, add a field called payment number. Now I'm going to add the line item stuff after all of this in Datacap Studio because I think it's easier. I could add some of the fields here, but it's just easier in Datacap Studio. This isn't really designed to do line items yet. I imagine that's coming at some point, but FastDoc Capture has some other things that make it easier to get set up, but line items isn't one of them. So I've got my 3 fields here. Let's make sure we do the recognition parts of it. I'll have to do the identify pages as well. I'm going to recognize the page. I'm going to have it load the zones for the fields because we're going to do some zonal stuff on this. Oh, we should probably get a total off of this as well. I should do that. Read machine print off of this, which means we'll do the OCR. I could force an OCRA, but in this case I'm just going to use OCR. On each of these fields I'm going to add the ability to read the field, and then I'm going to add whatever was recognized on the page to that zone. I'm going to do that for each of these. Date, we should probably put in some kind of date format check, and there we're pretty much done with that. Let's look at page ID here, identify pages, and that's under the batch itself, and I'm going to do it based on Fingerprint, but I know these are coming in off PDF, so I can pretty much just say the page source location, and I'm going to say the main page is type main and anything else is type trailing. So I'm going to just assume that I'm feeding in these redemptions that all have that format, and I'm going to read them in that way. So I'm identifying it basically based on the PDF. So those will separate out that way, and I've now got the document pretty much working from there. So let's go test this. I'm going to close this, open it in Datacap Studio. I just like the test interface in Datacap Studio a little better. I'm going to go open my application called Redemptions. And I have to go take this image, the document itself, and I'll go put it in the Datacap directory in the images folder for redemptions. So those are down here. Input multi-format, that's where it's going to automatically do the PDF conversion. If you came out of a Datacap 8 environment, man, the PDF conversion was kind of painful. It took a while, I had to do it a million times, but now it's pretty easy. It's all built in, which is nice. So I've got that set up. I can now go to my test tab. I'm going to choose multi-format here. I'm going to choose to say new vScan task. I'm going to say I'm going to scan multi-format. I'm going to push play, and this should read in that PDF and crack it into a single document here, since it's a single page. Or if it's multi-pages, some of them be trailing pages. There it is. I say advance because I can see I have one image here. It's the right image. I can now move into the page ID mode, and this should turn into a redemption, which it did. I'll say advance, and there it is. So I've got the data off, and it's created a company, date, and time. One of the things I know if I run it through Profiler, there's a page split going on here where it sends documents to verify if they have any validation issues. That's going to cause problems with Datacap Studio, so I always come back into this routing step, and I'm going to turn off that routing here. And the way I do that is I just turn off this batch split right here, this one. And the way you do that is you lock the rule set as you do in standard Datacap Studio stuff, right click on it, say disabled, save it, and now it won't split that batch. You'll have to turn it back on when you get back in testing in a real environment. If you want every document to go, you just turn off this check DCO status. So right now it'll say if the status is 1, then set it to needs verify. So it will only send it'll only send documents that have status of 1 to verify. If you turn that off, it'll say yes to every one of them, and then the batch split right here checks for that needs verify. If it has anything in it, it will split that document out. So that's how you turn that off. Now I can run it through Profiler. The batch is still running. I'm going to choose Profiler as the next step. I'm going to click play, and it should have gotten all of that data off. We didn't create a fingerprint, did we? Keep running. I didn't create a fingerprint yet. That's what I didn't do. It's hard to create a fingerprint from a PDF, so what you end up doing is using one of the TIFFs that was converted from the PDF. So I'm going to create a add fingerprint. I'm going to go find that in redemptions, batches, that batch we just ran. I do need a fingerprint for this. I have to run it through Fingerprint. So I'm just going to choose it as that fingerprint. So this one is going to be type redemptions main, and I now have to identify my areas. Now one thing is, remember I converted these with the PDF converter, so there was no fingerprint match, so it doesn't know what fingerprint to use. So we're going to have to add a rule to identify this fingerprint if we do it that way. I could do it either way. It doesn't really matter to me. It's just a demo. And in your environment you can do it either way as well. If you identify it with PDFs and you know everything's a redemption page, I'm going to show you how to set a fingerprint without calling find fingerprint. But first let me get the proper area. So the company name is Concrete Kingdom right here, and the date was date of issue. We could find that in many ways. In this case I'm going to do it zonally, and the payment number was here. But we're going to find some other ways to do that, because we're also going to add this total amount, so redemption total. So I'm going to save that, and we're going to find that through keyword searching. It's another way to do it. I'll lock this rule set. I'm going to add a field, and redemption total. So there's that one. I'm going to save that. Now that's not one that we're going to do with zones, so we'll come back to that at the end. Now I come back to my test tab. I can run through it again since I said keep running. I say profiler. It's still not going to find anything because I again forgot to set up that fingerprint properly. So it doesn't have a fingerprint ID, so it doesn't have any zones. So it shouldn't have any data here, which it doesn't. And now I've got to create a new rule set for setting the fingerprint. Now rule sets are pretty easy. I say add a rule set here. I'm going to rename it to set fingerprint. I'm going to give my rule names. I always start with R so I can find them in the log easier, and my functions I always start with F. If you set any of them, set the function name. That's the one you're going to mostly use in finding things in the log. Now I'm going to go back over to my actions library. I got to set this variable called template ID. Here is rule runner. It's a simple RR set. RR set. And my source is going to be, we got to find the zone number. What was that zone number? I'm going to go to the zones tab. I'm finding this number. Where are my zones? I've got 556 is the one I want to use. So this will just have everyone use 556. So RR set 556, and it's going to be at p dot template ID. So we're going to set that variable. That's what zone capture is going to look at. When you say find fingerprint, it sets that template ID value to the value of the fingerprint that it finds that matches the closest. So that's how we do that. I'm going to save that. Now I can attach it to the doc hierarchy using these opens and closes, or I can use the more modern, newer way of doing this, and I can choose where I want this to run. And I want this template ID to be set on a specific page type. So I'm going to say run on pages of type, and I'm going to say redemptions main, and I'm going to add redemptions trailing. So if we ever did change this to allow multiple pages and those line items went across pages, we'd want it to go across. So we'd combine the CCOs and have that line item table go across pages. So I'm going to have just make sure that we set that fingerprint on both of them. So there it is. I've set that. Now it's still not going to run. If you run this and you say, hey, template ID didn't get set, well, you still haven't attached it to your task profile, so you have to actually attach it here somewhere. I'm going to lock that. I'm going to add this rule set, and where do I want to set fingerprint? Recognize page ID has already been done, so I want it to be done before recognize. Recognize is going to do it's going to fill the zones and load the zones and things like that. You can look at that recognize and see that it's going to be finding the page and that kind of stuff. So it's doing the OCR. That's OCR A. Here it's loading the zones, so it's doing zone loads, which is where it's going to look for that template ID and load those zones. So there we have it all, and I can say run. I made sure everything was locked. I was looking at that as I quit out of that. Profiler, I don't have to click on it. I can simply choose profiler here, run it again. This time I say yes, run it again, and it should load those zones this time. I'm going to say keep running. It should load those zones, and now I have all my company data. I've got Concrete Kingdom, I've got my date, I've got my payment. So the next step is to add this line item stuff. The way you add line items to a document is you have to have a detail area, which is the overall zone, because we're going to use zones for this, and then you have a specific line item, and then you have the actual detail fields, the line item fields themselves. So I'm going to do this as adding a new type here, or a new field. I'm going to add a new field, and I'm going to call it details. Now, one thing I'm going to look at, so I have a cheat sheet. I've done this a bunch of times. I have a little image cheat sheet. I take screenshots of stuff and I keep them around for later, and I'm going to look at how I'm actually doing this. And in some of these cases, I've had issues where I've had an uppercase I, and it's caused me problems because I had an uppercase I here and the field name had a lowercase I. So I like to come back and always use the ones I know work. Details and line item with the lowercase I is how I'm going to get that to work. So details. Now I'm going to add another field here. Add field. Was it line items or line item? So I'm going to be really careful here. Line item. So I had a plural there. I'm going to take that S off of there. I think I've had so much trouble with it. I think there might be some kind of hard-codedness in this application as well, in the line item stuff. So I'm really careful about how I name them. So my field names now, my line items are going to be reference, your reference, invoice date, our reference, gross amount. That's enough, and I'll get all of these off. So I have about 5 here. So I'm going to add multiple. I'm going to add 5 fields. This is nice. It adds about 5, and I can simply click on it. Your reference, INV date, our reference, and gross amount, discount, and net amount. I didn't add enough. I should have added 6. I'll simply add one more field and net amount. There it is. So I've got all my fields there. Now I'm ready to create a zones around that. I can create my zones, but really I need to do my recognize line items rule set, and I've got that one that I outlined. I showed you the picture of. That's what I'm going to base it off of. Don't like to reinvent the wheel over and over again, but if you look at how I'm going to do this, and we have to do one more thing in the FP XML zones. We have to do something extra in the zones in this locate. We have to do this set details and line item pair FPX. If you don't have this, it won't, when you load the zones, it won't associate those with the line items, and none of this other stuff will work. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a details rule that calls scan details and loads CCO from field. I'm going to have a line rule that says scan line items, and I'm going to have an item rule for line items. So I'm going to do that part here. I don't know if that FPXML is done in this form template. I think that came from the locate template, but just let me make sure. Yeah, so we're probably going to have to take this recognize and make a custom version of it and branch it off of the UI rule set part of it. So I'll probably do that. But it's pretty far along, so that's good. So I'm going to create a new rule set called add rule set, and I call it line item rules. First one is our detail rules. F detail rules. I'm going to create another rule called our line item rules. F line item, and one more called R item rules, and F item. So now the details rule, this stuff comes from the zonal actions here at the bottom. And sometimes I use a different one. Scan details. Let me see what I was using here. So there's another one here for scan line item dynamic, and I think that comes out of invoice. I sometimes like that one a little better. It seems to work a little better. There's also scan. So scan details, I'll just use the standard one there. So that's one I know that worked. So scan details. So that's all you need in the details rule set. And I'm going to attach this to fields of type details. So there that is, line item rules. So I've got scan details. I think if we go and look at invoice, it has a scan line item fields dynamic. Let me make sure that's the right one. Scan line item dynamic. So that's what I'm looking for. Scan line item dynamic. Now this one, oops, I didn't put it on the function. I put it on, it wouldn't let me put it on the rule. I put it on the function. And this one doesn't need a parameter. You can do the help and look at what the parameter is. I can't remember what it is, but I know I don't need it because I've done this. I did this about a month ago. I haven't done it since. And then I'm going to call this other one populate zone line item field dynamic, which comes out of that same use case. Now this one, whoops, put it in the wrong place. I can delete it out of there. I got to put this one on the field itself. There's the field. Now this one, remember, I don't think we turned this on. I'm going to have this run on fields of type line item with the lowercase I. And this one I'm going to have run on fields. We're going to have multiple fields on this one. So this one's going to be run on fields of type R reference. Let's put them in order. R reference, invoice date, your reference. I think the next one was gross amount, and net amount. So let's make sure I got those right. I can see them here in this list of line item fields that we created. Make sure I've got all those. So I had them for, looking at this list right here, our reference, I have them backwards, invoice date, your reference, gross amount, oh, discount is the one I missed, discount, and right there, there's discount. So I've got all of those lined up to call the populate zone line item field dynamic. So that should line up. The big issue that I'll have with this is this still will not work because I haven't made this call to set details in line item pair FPX before read zone FPX was called. So I'm going to load this FPX stuff again, make this second call because it's called, instead of undoing that UI rule set, I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to go into that UI rule set and I'm going to find that load FPX. So here's my read zones FPX. So, and here's where they check for template ID is empty. I'm just going to copy that function and I'm going to add a new rule set here called, oops, I have to lock it. I'm going to add a new rule set here. Sorry, add a rule here called setup zones, and I call this, I can just paste that. I don't think I made a copy of it yet. Paste, there it is, read zones. So that's going to read the zones, and what I have to do, delete this function that was left over from creating it, creates an empty one. And what I have to do is, I'm always going to do this whether it has a template ID or not, so I'm going to remove that. And read zones, I'm going to set this FPX mel to the at p.zone read, so I'm just saying that's where they got it from. I don't need the go to next because we're only going to do one function, but the big one that I need here is this scan details and line item pair FPX. I can do the set directory as well, but I think it's already done. Those rules are located in FPXML. I'm going to say set, I'm going to put it, well, it's going to put it at the bottom either way. Set details, read zones, set directory FPX, and I'll make sure those go to the top, or I'll make sure this one moves down past it. So set directory FPX is at APPPATH, I think this is Fingerprint, make sure that's right, and at path Fingerprint, and then details comma line item for this one. This is just on what pairs are line items. And make sure these are very case sensitive. So again, I spent some time struggling with that at one point. So now I've got those. So where does this run at? I'm going to run this at the page level, and I'm going to run this on pages of type redemption main. That's where it gets set up. That's where it's going to load the fingerprint for that page type. Got one or two other problems. I'm going to save that. I'm going to publish that rule set. Now, I have to put it in the test profile or it actually won't run. So we've got our set fingerprint right here, which is calling our correct rule set. The other one is line items, and I'm making sure I didn't add any others. So line items are there, so I'm going to add that to profiler. And where do I want to run this at? This is going to be set up. I want it to do it before or after recognize, because recognize is going to run this find fingerprint again. I'm going to do it after, and if we have problems we'll run it before and we'll test out what that looks like. So now I've got it set. I still have to put my zones in, because remember our fingerprint doesn't have proper data here. I haven't put my fingerprint in a hierarchy either. You don't have to. It's prettier, but in this case I haven't done it yet. Redemption total, and we're going to find that by a locate here. And the next step is in this details rule, we have to set up these fingerprints. So the details is the entire area for where you're going to find these line items. The line item itself is a single line item here, okay, and try to fit it in. And then the references, I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit, these have to fit pretty much inside the line item itself. So just make sure they're not bigger than, and taller than the line item. You can go through and sometimes when you start having trouble, you come through and look at the actual zones on these. You can dig into the actual up, down, left, and right locations. Did I do that right? Your reference is here? Yeah. Invoice date, our reference, I was talking not listing gross amount. So again, making sure these fit within the line item, and they do. So there's that, and then net amount here. So we should now have those fingerprints set. So now we've got all that details, line item, and those fit within it. That line item can move up a little bit, but I don't think it'll cause problems. I think it's okay. So I'm going to try to test it again, and hopefully this time it reloads that zone and runs it. I don't need to choose the actual batch. I can simply choose profiler, click run, type Y, and I'm going to say keep running, and hopefully we've got some line item data, but it's doubtful. So what happened was we have to recreate this, because remember when we ran through this the first time, it did the create document, but it didn't create the details field because they didn't exist yet. So we have to actually cancel this batch and start a new one. So let's go through. Every once in a while you got to create a whole new batch. I've gotten through with just one so far. That's pretty good. Being able to rerun them over and over again is a good feature. And I'm going to choose multi-format and go through this again. Okay, I'm at the profiler step. I'm looking at this, and I've got this details field now. So now it will actually run on details, create the line item field, and then call the right stuff to create all of the individual line items and create the line items themselves, the data. So click go, keep running, and I should have line items, hopefully. Details, that's a good sign. Open that one. We've got line item 0, which is your reference. Nice, so we've got all this data here. Let me click on, sometimes you have to click on the actual image to see it. So I've got all this line item data here that shows it. So we should have one that's incorrect here, which is this line item 6, I'm betting, is from that last item, which is your total amount, and I don't want that. So the next step is, now that you have the line items, is to do what we call filtering on it. So the way we're going to filter on this is I'm going to say it's only valid if it has the 2 reference numbers and a gross amount. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do, because I'm not really worried about the title. So I'm going to make sure if it doesn't have that, we're going to filter it out. And they do this in AP. The same action exists in AP, and that's this action right here, where I am going to do that filter. So let me look at the next image in my set right here. No, it's not. We may have to jump over to AP and look at that as well. So any others? No. So we may have to look at that in AP, which is common for me to jump over there. It comes with Datacap. You have to pay an extra license if you're going to use it, but you can always just look at it. So the filtering in AP is the action we actually have to add next. And I'm going to call that line item rules. I'm going to do it outside of this action because I don't want the details and the setup zones to run at the same time. So I'm going to call this one, I'm going to add a rule set here called filter line items. Our filter line items. And then I'm just going to jump over to AP and show you that where they do it, because I always just look it up somewhere else. I don't actually know anything. This is what I would do to look this up. It's in filter. Of all names, it's in filter here, and in this details rule they call check subfields. And you can see they're saying it has to have quantity and line total, or price and line total. So I'm just going to say reference gross amount, and otherwise it's going to filter it out. Now this is nice because I can find out where that is by clicking on this little red button. This will show me, this one's pointed on to the right, it's going to show me where that exists in the actions library. If I put it on the left, I can find where a specific action is called everywhere in this, and in this case it's in validations. So check subfield is in validations. I no longer need that, so I'm going to go to the validations actions library. Check subfields right here, add that. Now this is where help comes in really handy, because this will explain exactly how this works, and I can go and look at, you know, samples and all this. But I just know, I mean, I have to have in single quotes, I have to have two items, you know, or this or that. So if it has these three items, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my redemptions, main, whatever the detail, because I need these field names. So I'm going to say, close that, I'm going to say your reference, and I guess I put an S on that, I'm seeing that. So and our reference and gross AMOUNT. So I'm going to make sure it has those three, but I'm going to go back and look at that help again to make sure I format. I don't know if I need a print around it or not. So do I need a print? So item ID, they put it in parens, but they had, if it had this or that and that, I just had three ands, they put them in parens. So I'm going to put it in parens just to make sure that it formats out correctly. I don't think you need them, but hey, can never be too safe. There you go. I'm going to save that. Now that's going to filter out. Now remember, it's still not going to run because I haven't attached it anywhere. And where do I attach this? So I go back to AP and look at this. They did this details rule. It's probably going to be on the details rule. So in AP is an older application, so it's not going to show up in these. Where it's going to show up is in the actual document hierarchy. So I can click on the rule set, click on this red arrow pointed to the left, and it'll show me where it's attached. And it's attached on the open of the details rule. And I can do that same thing in my application by choosing of field type, and I'm on open of field type and choose details. So now this will run on the open of details. Still, it won't run yet because I still don't have it in my task profile. How many times do I mess this up where, hey, nothing ran, oh yeah, I forgot to put it here, I forgot to put it there. You always have to attach the rule to a specific field, and then you have to attach the rule set into your task profiles. So this is where I'm going to do the filter. I'm going to lock that. I'm going to put filter line items here, and where am I going to do that? Right after reading of the line items. I'm going to pause it, and then I'm going to go and run profiler again. Remember, I have that batch still there. I click play, press Y, and here it is. I can keep running and try to find that. Now the last piece, if this worked, we're going to do one more thing. Details, line item 0. So I've got line item 5. So as you can see, me show the image by clicking on it first. Should have done that early on. There's the image. As you can see, our line items end at number 5 right here, and we filtered out that total column. So the nice thing about this is it's just done. We can also have this go over multiple pages. You combine the CCOs, and then when you call this line item thing, it'll read them. It's going to read all kinds of data here, but you're going to be filtering it out. So this is the same filter you would use if these line items had kind of, if you had 3 lines per line item, and like the bottom, the second and third line only had a couple of pieces of reference data. You would use that to get the data. If you've got stuff on each of those 3 lines, then you're going to have to do some more work. You're going to have to dig into the code on how the zonal stuff works, and a number of partners have done that kind of work to improve line items when they are more spread out. It's a harder piece to do, but it's possible to do. Lots of people do it. It's beyond the scope of this video. Next thing, I want to get that what was it, this amount to be settled. Now I think what I'm gonna do here is I need to know what text is on that page, and I'm gonna say settings on my UI rule set. So I'm going to pop up this UI rule set, and I'm going to make sure that when I read this page, I'm going to save the results to a text file. Okay, so I'm going to save that. I'm going to close it, and I want to look at that text file. So we're going to use that as our keyword lookup to find that actual total. And we could do this on the other fields as well. This payment number might be a good one. Date. If it stops working zonally, let's just do a lookup, because it's got a header right next to it that says, hey, here's the date. So we could do that there as well. So the next step is I'm going to go back through and do my test again, and I'm going to just run Profiler one more time. I'm going to say yes, and I'm really just trying to get it to generate this text file. I'm going to go show you this text file next. So I'm going to say keep running, and I'm going to go into my redemptions, into my batches. I got through this application with only 2 batches. That's crazy. There is this text file now on tm002.txt. This is all the text that came out with the OCR engine, and I'm going to open those up, and you can see that there is a line here that says total amount to be settled USD. If that's the same on all of them, that's the keyword I'm going to be searching for. So I'm going to create a keyword file, and I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to save it here, and that's what I'm going to be looking for. I could have total amount, but in this case I'm going to have the full line there, because that's one that I want to be specific on what I'm looking for, that line. And I'm going to save this file as what we call a key file, K-E-Y. And I'm going to put this into redemptions, DCO. I'm going to put it in this DCO folder, and I'm going to say total amount.key. There's the file, and the next thing is I'm going to use that key file. I'm going to add some rules to look up this value in my application. So again, another rule set, and this one's going to be for lookups. AP does the same thing, so you can look at the AP system for that. I might have to lookup keyword by keyword, and my rule is I'm going to find the total, R find total, F find total, and inside my actions library under lookups, under locate, find key list. So this is one where you could just look at this stuff and it'll tell you how to do it. I'm just going to give it inv-num. It's going to look for this file inv-num.key, and it's going to try to find the values in that. So that's my lookup, and my key list was called total amount, I think. I'm going to try to find that, and I'm going to move right, go right word down. I'm going to go right 1, and then I'm going to say update field. So this will copy the value that's currently under my cursor. Remember, I found that text. I want right 1 word, which is going to be that total. It might be 2 words, because if I look at that document again, let's go look at that text file. It might be 2 words. No, it's 1. Okay, so it's 1 word, so it's the next word over. I'm going to go write 1 word, update the field, and then you can do some validations on this as well. So you could put a rule in here that says, hey, if it's not numeric, go to the next one, and I do the same lookup and look below it, and it's because it'll fail. When it fails, it drops into the next function, and you can cascade down trying to find this word in this value in different areas. In this case, these documents are pretty structured, so I can pretty much leave that, but it's a nice little capability. It really comes out of this. If a function fails, it drops into the next function. You can have it look in a different place, or look again further into the document, so go for the second, third, fourth time you found this. I'm going to save that. I still need to attach it somewhere, remember, and I'm going to attach this on fields of type, which one? Total amount. Redemption total. So I'll save that. Now you're going to say, hey, one more thing, you didn't connect it to the actual application, so it runs. I'll put it in this profile, lock this, copy it over there, and I want this to run lookup by keyword. I'm going to have to do it before all my validations, because this might be something that we could go through and add some capability to add up all the line items and compare them to that total amount, have some kind of validation fail if they don't match up. That'd be a nice little security feature to make sure someone's not trying to mix up our invoices and game the system of record that we're trying to identify this document with. So now I can actually test this. Again, we still have it running, so I don't have to create a whole new one. I can do profiler, click run, I'll click yes, and now that redemption total should be filled. Keep running, open that, and redemption total is filled. And we can see its location. Let me fit this back in the page. Its location is right here, so we've actually found it in the and it has the location here where the zone was done. So that's a really good application on how to add line items to your application. Now my demo's done. I'm going to go through and run it through Datacap desktop, or maybe I'll add it to Content Navigator, depends on where we want to demo it, but the basic capabilities of this demo are completely done. So hope you learned something from this line item capability. There's a lot of neat features that really work around this capability, and a lot of this comes from understanding AP and how that works, so you can look at AP as your reference application for doing line items. Thanks.